Hey guys, for my second week for my practicum, I went in all day Tuesday and then I actually went in for 2 hours on Thursday as well to see a few in class presentations by Kirsten, Mrs. Randall, who is the school social worker, and then also a woman, Lindsay, who is also one of the high school counselors. But I'll get to that a bit later in this video. I'll start talking about Tuesday first. And that day started off on a high note. There was a senior boy, who had failed the English Regents 2 or 3 times. I think 3 times. He's failed it 3 times already. And so he needs to pass this Regents in order to, pretty much keep him on track to be able to graduate. And he took the Regents, just this, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago, and he passed, and he didn't just pass, he got a 78. Which was huge. And so everyone in the whole counselor's office everyone was really excited. And he came in, and he was just so ecstatic. Like he said that he felt really good coming out of the exam. But he didn't know that he was going to do that well. And I think that was just really awesome to see how, that kind of progression of, these counselors, working with him and just knowing that, that had obviously been a struggle for him, and a pretty a tough area for him in his academics. And to see him, kind of come out the other side and, like I said, not only just pass the Regents, but get us passed by having a 78, was really huge. So I think that was really cool to see. And like I said, everyone in the office was really, really happy for him when he came in. So that was really cool to see. And just like I said, just a nice kind of like rewarding experience on all ends, but especially for the senior. So that happened. And then Mrs. Randall then stayed in the office with me and Kirsten, and pretty much they just kind of discussing a lot about how common vaping is, within the high school and just even middle school students, and how it's just become a pretty prevalent thing. And so they were trying to kind of discuss in the works of, well, maybe, potentially doing not just a presentation with students, but also doing even a presentation for parents about vaping, and just to kind of discuss, again, like all the surrounding areas of, what does it look like? What do jewels look like? Other type of vaping, you know, tools, and kind of, its effects, both, physically, psychologically, mentally, all of that. And so kind of how negatively of an effect that can have, because they feel like a lot of parents don't really understand the full effects of vaping and just how detrimental it is to students. So they kind of just were kind of discussing it, trying to get into the works of, we think a parental presentation would actually be really important. So trying to decide, do they do that, at night after school? Maybe they try to offer one in the morning for some parents who can't get there that late. So they were just kind of discussing that. So I thought that was, something good to discuss, just because I think, like I said, that is such a prevalent thing now within middle school and high school students. So I think it's an important topic that should be discussed, like I said, not just with the students, but with their parents as well. So they're kind of aware of the ins and outs of, the signs of what to look for, if their if their child is vaping or juuling or anything like that. So I thought that was a good idea, and it was kind of fun just to be a part of that and kind of throw around some, bounce ideas off of each other. So that was cool. And then, a few kids came in just to change schedules, because this past Monday was the first day of the new quarter. So I guess, as Kirsten was saying, and Michelle as well, is that it's, for middle school students, it's different, but in high school, obviously, there's a lot more room to change your schedule, and, take different electives and stuff like that, or change your study hall period and everything. And so a ton of students, I'd say at least seven different students on Tuesday came in to change their schedules while I was there. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, but I totally understand, because again, like a lot of students, some of them, it's, one of them was considering dropping their in an AP course, and they're considering dropping the course. But we actually spoke with the one girl, and she's doing pretty well in the class, but she's, a bit of a perfectionist in that way, and is used to having all A's, and, doesn't have an A right now in that class, so feels like she's overwhelmed. She has a really big course load. But, we were just kind of talking with her, and Kirsten just kind of had to, was like, obviously you do what's best for you, but just reminding her, to try to put her at ease that, if you do finish out, it is February pretty much. So, you might as well at this point stick out through the APs. Like, she's doing well. She has like mid to high 80s. And then plus two, you get, since it's weighted, you get, like I said, plus about six, plus six. So it's like if she has an 86, she'll have a 92. And so I think that kind of helped put a bit of, perspective into the girl's mind. And I think she seemed a bit more like at ease. So she's going to kind of wait it out this week and see. And then if she really just feels like it's just too much for her, then she's going to drop the class. But so that was probably the biggest legitimate like potential class change issue. Otherwise, it was a lot of students coming in saying, oh, like, can I switch into this study hall or that study hall, or can I, get out of, or some of them too. It was interesting. Like one boy who came in, junior, he goes to BOCES, and he has enough credits, but he has a study hall, and he actually came in looking to see if he could fill that study hall with the class instead, so he could get more credit. So, we were going over through the different electives that were offered during that period, like international foods or ceramics, or art, like other art classes. So it was just interesting to see how, I guess, common that is at the beginning of each quarter, that, it's a lot of foot traffic coming in and out of the counselor's office to kind of deal with scheduling issues, no matter how major or minor. So that was something that, was nice to just kind of be a part of, and just kind of see that that's like a typical thing throughout high schools, that usually at the beginning of those quarters. But so then, really cool experience was, I actually then hung out with Lindsay for a bit. So, like, as I mentioned earlier, she's one of the high school counselors too. And I got to sit in on her group that day. And so pretty much like every Tuesday, from about 11:30 to, I guess, 12:15, because it's about 45-50 minute periods. I got to sit on her 12-on-1 class or group. So there were 6 students in that class, and it was helpful too. I mean, even last week from Jordan's video, with him being in BOCES and he's in a 621, or 612, 621, 621, work class. And so I kind of then got the gist, what does that all mean? The breakdown, all those classifications. So it was kind of helpful going into this past Tuesday, kind of being like, oh, I kind of have an idea of, what this entails. But, still Lindsay kind of just broke everything down for me. And this specific, 12-on-1 class kind of focused on like current events, like counseling current events. That's pretty much like the title of their group. And, usually like each week Lindsay will pick a theme for then like the kids to discuss, and because it's a lot of them, it's like a life skills class, so the 12-on-1, and so it's a lot of the kids in there have like low cognitive disabilities. And so pretty much, like I said, so Lindsay really focuses in that class on like life skills, since pretty much all of those students in there are probably going to be getting CDOSs, if not whatever that one step lower is. But so essentially all of those kids will be getting CDOSs, so the purpose is to help them work on life skills, so that once they do finish high school, they can then, if they could choose to go out into the working force or the military, or, whatever they so choose, that'll then, prepare them for that. Said having life skills is super important, especially in general, but in this particular situation as well. So the theme this week that Lindsay focused on was honesty. And we kind of just went around the room, and it's interesting because, within this class, like there's a lot of, even though they're all low cognitive disability students, they all, of course, vary across different levels. So it was just kind of interesting to see in the dynamic of the group and how it went. And so we focused on honesty, and pretty much like Lindsay had, just kind of ran through a bunch of, different scenarios and kind of questions, and, just asking like some probing questions, but nothing too, too existential or anything. It was just, she started off by saying, like, oh, okay, so, do we know what honesty means? And I liked how she phrased it. She was like, how would you define honesty? And so each student kind of went around and said their own definition, which, I think was important to help each student feel that their own individual definition matters, because sometimes, again, like whether it's good or bad, everyone can have their own take and perspective on what something means. So she kind of went around with that, and then, we went in further about honesty, with saying, what does it look like to be honest? Have you ever been honest? What's a time when you've been honest? Or then we talked about dishonesty, and, what does that look like? And, what are some maybe consequences that you can have because of that? And so we talked kind of within that realm too. And since the life skills course, we talked about, dishonesty and how, that can affect you in your job, and how being honest is, an important quality to have. And it's a great character value. And that can help you then, not just in your personal life, but again, in your work life, and with relationships, and with your coworkers, and with family and friends. And so I thought that that was a really good topic, and it was nice to see how Lindsay ran that. And it was just a really good opportunity to sit in on that group. And there was one other woman, Vicky, who is the, I guess she's not a TA, I forget exactly what it's called, but so pretty much she sat in, she always sits in on that as well, to kind of help facilitate things. And so it was like a really cool experience. And then we went at the end of that, we kind of broke down to some almost like trivia, but not trivia, where there were we asked each student almost like a riddle is more, like what I'm trying to say. And so pretty much, they're supposed to be tough, and there's no right or wrong answer, as Lindsay said to the students, but, she'd read a scenario, like something, for example, about, John went to the store, and he, went to go up to buy 2 candy bars, and the cashier only charged him for 1. Does John tell the cashier, or does John just take the candy bars and leave? And so it's just kind of stuff like that, where again, it's just more like, what are your morals? And so that was kind of just like the gist of those questions. But so that was a really fun like group to be a part of, and I think I'm likely going to be going there every Tuesday. And then at some point, Lindsay said that then I can run a few of those groups, which I think is awesome. So I'm looking forward to doing that. We actually talked about maybe doing a social media, internet type of topic for one of the weeks that I'm going to like research for, so that I can kind of prepare for that. So that was a really fun experience to be a part of. And I'm looking forward to like the chance of actually, kind of running that group. So that was a really cool experience. And then Lindsay kind of just afterwards just showed me quickly in her office, just, their scheduling, because I was curious, how does that work? Are they in that room all the time, or is it, certain periods? And so it's pretty much just that one period, but each student has different levels of, what classes they're in. So like there is like one girl in there who's in a regular English 10, and there's one guy in there that's in like a regular global 10. But most of the other classes then are pretty much just, whether it's study hall, some of them do go to BOCES, or it's just like an art class, a gym, and those kind of like electives, or I guess requirements, but those like just general, like I said, physical education classes. So that was just really interesting to learn about, because that's definitely an area I'm not as knowledgeable about. So that was really helpful to have Lindsay kind of break everything down for me and kind of explain really the more of the ins and outs of what that 1201 class kind of looks like. So that was really cool. And then finally on Thursday, all the high schools, so like their PE classes are all intermixed. So you could have a 9th grader and a 12th grader in the same exact gym class. And so what Kirsten, Lindsay, and then Miss Randall were doing was, during PE classes, they were having presentations about kind of time management, but also mixing in with, the effects of your phone and social media, and how that can really be a distraction from managing your time. And so that was really just cool to be a part of that presentation. And it was just, I thought it was a great setup. We watched 2 videos in there, and the students kind of got to see, it was like, one was the life jar, and just kind of showing how there are rocks, pebbles, and sand. And, the rocks symbolize things that you need to do. The pebbles are things that you like to do, but maybe you don't necessarily need to do. And then the sand is just extra kind of fun fillers that you definitely don't need to do, you can survive without. And they might be kind of time wasters, something like, video games or reading. And so just kind of learning how to balance that, the stuff that you need to get done. So the big rocks have to go into the jar first, then you fill it with the pebbles, and then lastly the sand. So I thought that was a cool analogy. And then the last video that we watched was about your phone, and it was actually really cool. These high school students had to leave their phone. They couldn't touch it for 20 minutes. And you see the video, it's kind of flipping through all these kids, and they're all just can't sit still. They're freaking out. Their phones are dinging. And so it was just kind of a big wake-up call, I feel like, to students to see, like, wow, these kids can't sit still for more than 20 minutes without touching their phone. So it was kind of just in that way, like a really good experiment. And then we just went around and asked people how they managed their time in the class, and, and just kind of like figure out ways to like how to best manage your time, and what's, of utmost importance in your life that needs to get done, stuff like school and sleep and eating, and maybe, sports or whatever extracurriculars and stuff like that. So it was a really cool time management presentation, and I liked being a part of that, so it was helpful to be a part of that and help. And I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to at some point give my own presentation. But so that was this past week, and I look forward to posting more about next week.